Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. You are listening to Daily Beats. Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. You are listening to Daily Beats. Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. You are listening to Daily Beats. Daily Beats Productions. Daily Beats Productions. You are listening to Daily Beats.
What's up, YouTube? My name is Tiago Duarte and welcome to another live stream here. This is the Producer Show and welcome to you. So today I have a couple of questions here already set up. I have 6 questions that I'm going to try to go through in this live stream. So this is a Producer Show where I get all of your questions and then I answer them here in videos so that I can help you speed up your learning process so that you become a better producer faster. And the main idea for this live stream is to basically just gather the questions and answer them best here. So you can post questions in the comments of the videos in the YouTube channel. You can post questions here in the chat. And also you can subscribe to the newsletter where I have a link in the description for. And you can subscribe to the newsletter and I will be sending every Friday, I will be sending an email with a form so that you can post your questions there. And those questions will have a higher priority compared to the rest of the questions that I get or the source of the questions that I get. So without further ado, by the way, I will be doing these live streams every Saturday at around 6 p.m. GMT plus 2, which is the Berlin time. So you can always check against your time zone. And also, if you are here watching the live stream, just leave a comment or hi in the chat so that I know that you are here. And that's the best way is to interact with you guys so that I can answer your questions and leave the questions in the chat. So let's jump into the first question, which is how to detect the note of a sample. This was a question that I got from one of the videos that I have, or one of the comments of one of the videos that I have in the channel. And let's jump into FL Studio so that I can show you how to detect the note of a sample so that you can better work with samples. So today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. One of them is sampling, which is this question. I also have some other points regarding MIDI. So if you have any questions regarding that, just be sure to leave them in the chat. So let's go and jump to the first question, which is how to detect the note of a sample. So let me jump into FL Studio so that we can start working here with samples. So there's several ways to do the same thing in FL Studio. That's one of the things that I really enjoy about FL Studio, is that allows you to do the same thing several ways. So let's bring here some samples. So I have a bunch of sample packs or construction kits. Let's go maybe with here the 14 and let's grab a sample. Let's go, maybe not this one. Yeah, could be something like this. This is a more complex because I think it has some chords. So one way that I like to do this is, the best way for me is to use, for instance, Slice X. So this is the way that I like to work with samples. So what I do, I just grab a sample and bring it here. And as you can see now, we have all the shops. Sometimes we need to go and do some cleanup of the sample like that so that we can have the best shops possible. But as you can see now, I can play the notes and change the pitch. And this is one of the things that I really like to do. So it's very important for you to know the key of the sample. So in this case, the sample does not have a key. So if the sample does not have a key and you want to know, it's very important because if you start messing around with pitch, for instance here, you might you might find issues when you want to add other instruments. So it's always good to know what is the key of the sample. To do that, I usually do a copy of this sample or this instrument, so that I can have the sample here where I manipulate it. And this one is just for reference. So what I'm going to do here in this one, we have some options here in the range. And one of the options, actually it's not in the range, is in this one, the regions. And we have here detect pitch regions. So what this will do is basically the pitch is the note of the sample or the notes of every sample. And what we can do here, it will detect the pitch of every region. So we have here a bunch of regions. If I do this, now you see that some of the regions changed. So the slices changed, but now we can see that we have, for instance, E4, E4 here, and pretty much this is E4. But because this is a chord, it's probably E minor chord. So let's delete this. And what I can do now is load up another piano so that I can see that if it's actually in the correct key. We can close this one now. And let's do, for instance, let's do a note E here. And if I play both together, so now they sound in tune. If it was not D or E, for instance D, it also sounds good because it's probably belongs to the same key. But if I do D sharp, now it sounds dissonant. It sounds not so good. Let's go with F sharp. F sharp sounds good. This one doesn't sound good, F. So we could actually, with this information, knowing that we have, for instance, E is part or is the one of the notes of the sample here, as you can see. We could also check the other ones. Basically, it's all E because this is it's a very simple sample. As you can see, we have A there, but most of the times is E. So what we could do is actually get the notes of the scale that we are using. So I know E belongs, F doesn't belong, F sharp belongs, this one could also belong, this one not so much, A also belongs because we saw A there, A sharp not so much, B could work, C, I don't know, C could also work, D also, and D sharp not so much. So then we are back to E. So we could use this information of knowing what is the one of the notes in the scale or in the sample, and we could extrapolate the key of the sample or the scale of the sample, sorry, the scale in which the sample was created, and then we could go ahead and bring other instruments, and we could do a piano, we could do bass, we could do whatever, you know. And with this information, it's very easy for us producers to start working or taking the bass sample and then adding more instruments on top of it to make our compositions more interesting and more complex. So this is one of the ways to use another slice X. But if you don't want to slice your sample, if you just want to use the sample as it is, you could still bring it into slice X, but there's another way to do this. So let's delete slice X and let's right click here with in the sample, and let's do edit in audio editor. And this basically will give us the same, almost the same tools that we have here in slice X. So if I go here for the regions again, I have also this option detect pitch regions. If I click here, you see that I get the same thing. And this is a very easy way to get, do the same thing as slice X. So it's, as I told you, is getting the same thing in different ways. And that's one of the reasons why I really like FL Studio, because it allows you that flexibility. You don't necessarily have to do things one way. You can have multiple ways to do the same thing. There's also another way to do things. To detect the note of the sample. And okay, this is one of them. Let's go here to the mixer. We can actually delete the Edison. And again, the process would be the same. You load this into Edison, check the pitch regions, and then you will be able to see what is the note of the sample or the pitch of the sample. And from then you can try to extrapolate the scale that it was used. Another way would be to, let's maybe do a loop like this, something like that, or we can actually just use this one here, for instance. And what we could do is bring here a new plugin from FL Studio. It's called Tuner. And if I play this, it's actually I lost the selection. No, why? I don't know why. Let's keep it like that. And as you can see, if I play, now it's not listening. I don't know why. It's giving me A2, shouldn't be. So let's increase the reactivity. Oh, now it's going to the correct key. So sometimes it can be a little bit hard to get correct a note. I usually like to increase the reactivity. The other day I was recording some guitars with a friend of mine from Portugal, and we used the tuner to tune the guitar. So this was a great tool to have in our in FL Studio, because it was easy to just connect the guitar and check if it was the correct pitch, or if the guitar was in tune. And as you can see, now we have E4. When I use samples, I like to increase the reactivity to make it a little bit more fast to recognize the notes. And as you can see, we could actually go all the way, and you see that it's jumping too much. So maybe we can decrease a little bit so that it's stable, and that would be a nice option. So let's go. We have this one. Let's go to this one here. Maybe it's the same. So this one is A. So now we could actually test that out. Let's bring A here. Maybe on a lower. Actually, this I think is actually E, not A. I don't know. I would have to see the actual sample note. But again, this could be one of the ways to also do that, to catch the note of the sample. Could be a way. I like to do it with Edison or SliceX, but this could also be a way. So I think that's it for this question. It's a question that comes up a lot in my comments section, in my videos, because it's whenever we are working samples. So I lost my train of thought. Usually when we are doing like hip hop or rap producers, we like to use a lot of samples, and this could be that's why it's a very common question that I get in my comments, because I'm a hip hop and rap producer for the most part. I also produce other type of songs or other genres, especially techno, but I would say hip hop is more uses more sampling than other genres of music. That's why I get a lot of questions like these. Well, how to select the key or how to detect the note of a sample. Okay. Speaking about hip hop, today I bought 2 CDs. I usually don't buy CDs, but I bought this one here, the Wu-Tang CD. Actually, I bought 2 Wu-Tang CDs. This one is called the Iron Flag, and this is something that I want to start doing, buying some CDs. I had one CD, which is actually my favorite album, which is called Illmatic from Nas. It's one of the albums that I can listen from start to finish in its entirety. And also I bought this one, Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers. This is also a very good album. And I just wanted to have these albums here. Some of the albums that I think are really iconic to me or really good to me, I wanted to buy them. And as you can see, I like to see the inside of the samples of the album, and this is really cool. This is something that I'm more into it, and that's why talking about hip hop, I just remember this. And the Illmatic album, I just gave it away, and I shouldn't, but I did, and I think I will be able to get it, or at least I will check in the stores to see if I find it. Okay, I have here another question, which is how to organize plugins. So I've done some of these, I answered some of these questions in the past, but again, this question comes up because it's a good question and some people do not know how to organize plugins in FL Studio. And I think it's a really cool thing to know, because when you are adding plugins to your library or to FL Studio or to any other DAW, sometimes FL Studio might give you some random place where they put the plugins. So I like to always organize my plugins so that I have them in a specific order. And let's go and let me show you how to do that. So the first thing that you do is to, let's do here in the channel rack. Let me show you. As you can see, my plugins are organized in this fashion. So I like to have it in this tree view. And to change this, you just go here to categories, simple or tree. And by doing that, so let's see categories. And now it shows up a big list. I like to have that in categories. Even when you do here categories, you have third parties, Air, Arturia, and so on. So all the folders that I did, now they are selected in that way. If you do simple, you will have organized by alphabetic order, but I like to have it tree because it's a little bit easier for me. I know already where to go, and it's very easy for me to go to places that I like. I like this type of menu. So how does one organize these plugins? So as you can see, I have SonyVox folder with a bunch of plugins. I have third party, and here I have a bunch of other plugins. Here I have waves. So how can you create these own folders so that you have a tree structure like this? It's very simple. You go here to the browser, and if we go to the plugin database, we have effect, generator, and installed. If I go here, for instance, to installed, we have effects and generators. If I open these ones, you see that we have Fruity, New, VST, and VST3. Most of the times, this will be just for FL Studio plugins. And this one here, VST and VST3, will be for FL Studio plugins. So if I open here, or if I click here, you see that first I'm in effects. So there's two distinctions, effects and generators. Effects are the plugins that you use here to generate, generators are the plugins that you use here in the channel rack to load instruments and play sounds. And then if you go to the mixer, then you will have here the effects. And these are different type of plugins compared to the generators. So generators are plugins that create sound, effects are plugins that effect sound, or they apply some type of effect. This could be filters, distortion, reverb, delay, stuff like that. So now let's go and go here to generators. And if I do VST, you see that I have a big list of plugins here. If I go to generators, this is where I have all the organization that you can see here whenever I do have here. So if you see here, third party, and I have this folder here, third party, and then I have the Air folder there, and so on. To do that, you right click here and you do open. If you do open, you will open up a folder in your Windows Explorer. And this is where you can create or organize the plugins the way you want. And you can create folders, you can do folders inside folders, and so on. One plugin that I installed recently is this sample tank here. And I want to move this plugin into my third-party library. So let me move this aside just a little bit. As you can see, I have the plugin here directly as in sample tank 4. If I go back to the database here with generators, you see that I have the sample tank 4 here. So let's do Control X and let's move these to the third party, and let's do Control V. Very simple. If I update this, now I have sample tank 2, 3, and 4. And if I go back to the FL Studio, let me do that. And if I do refresh here, the browser, you see that the sample tank 4 disappeared from here. And if I open up this one, it's also disappeared from there. So if I now go to third party, you see that sample tank is here. So this is the way you do this. It's very simple. You just drag and drop stuff. You create folders, and you can organize everything as you want. You can also change the original plugins from image line. So let's say you have here the synth classic. Let's say you want to bring these ones into synth and have just one folder with all the synths that you have. You could do something like that. Just organize these as you would organize any file in your system. And this you can, as you can see, this is a FL Studio preset. So this is not changing the DLL per se. So this is not changing the plugin location. This is just a reference file that helps you to organize here the list. So if you delete, for instance, if I delete sample tank 4 from this folder, it will not delete sample tank plugin itself from your system. It will only delete the reference in here, in this menu. You can always add this reference with more plugins, but it will not, it's a distinction that I have to make. It will not remove your plugin from your system. It just removes the reference inside FL Studio. So that's an important thing. So you can move this around as you want without any issues of removing your plugins from your system. And I think that's it for this question. So thanks for all the questions, by the way. And yeah, let's go and jump into the next one. This one is a good one that I like. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing when I'm producing music is to do some lo-fi beats. I really enjoy lo-fi, and I think it's one of the most interesting sounds that not, how can I say, it's one of the most interesting, it's, I don't want to say genre, but styles. It's more like a style of beats. And I really like to listen to lo-fi when I'm chilling, when I'm cooking, when I'm studying, working, something like that. I think it's a really cool style inside of hip hop, which is when you say lo-fi, it means low fidelity, and basically it's just a reference to the old school type of beats, because in the early days of hip hop production, you would not have DAWs or digital audio workstations and computers to make music. You would have to do it with drum machines, with the keyboards, like the SP1200. That's a drum machine. I don't think it's a keyboard. No, but I think there's a keyboard. But then there are the MPCs and stuff like that. So those were the machines where you would make beats in the past. And those machines do not have the fidelity that we have today. So today we have systems in our computers, in our DAWs, with 32-bit floating point and very high sample rates that we can have. In the past, we would have 8-bit and limited sample rate. So those limitations gave something to the sound that made it sound unique. And we can replicate that in today's environment, today high fidelity or hi-fi environment. And to do that, we can do several things. The thing that I really like to do, and let me bring here a beat so that I can show you how to do that easier. Let me just grab one of the beats that I did last week. It's called Evil. And it was kind of a reference to Halloween. Okay, so now we have the beat here. Let me lower the volume a little bit so that I can speak over it. And one of the things that I like to do when I'm trying to do lo-fi beats, first of all, is apply some EQ. And I like to apply EQ because one of the things that we had in the past was also some limitation in terms of the frequencies that we could reproduce. So the earlier machines did not have too much low end, and the high end was also a little bit limited. So what I like to do, I like to do some type of low cut and high cut. And let me do some selection right here so that we can have a nice loop. So automatically you can see that. Let's see the before and after.
Daily Beats Production.
Automatically it gave us a little bit darker tone because we remove a little bit of the high end, and we also remove a little bit of the low. Now we are, maybe this is too much. Let's go maybe like this, and we can also do something like that. And we could focus, for instance, here in the mids. Okay, this could be one of the ways to do this. Of course, you can always change the parameters so that you can manipulate how you would like to sound. The next thing would be to add some type of lo-fi, and this is kind of like reducing the bit rate of the sample. As I told you, if you see in your options, the audio settings, you can see that today we are working at 44,100 hertz, and the quality of our plugins, or not plugins, but the quality of our audio is very high nowadays. And for instance, if you see here, if I would go to export, you could export as 32-bit floating point, 24 and 16. But what I want to do is simulate the old machines. So for that, you can decrease the quality of your sound by limiting the amount of bits that you would have in the output. For that, you would use, for instance, I have this Ultra Maximizer that allows me to change here the quantization. And as you can see, I have 24, 20, 16, 12, and 8. I would go to 12 or maybe 8. As you can see now, the quality is even lower, or the quality of the sound, but that's actually what we want in this type of lo-fi beats.
Daily Beats Production.
If you don't want to have some hissing noise, we might go from 8 to 12, but 8 is okay. And this is doing it manually. So with these 2 points, as you can see, there's already some hissing noise. Maybe I would go to 12 to reduce that hissing. Or we can also leave it at 12 and then bring up another filter and then just remove all of this hissing again. So let's see without. So this way we have the full fidelity, the full range.
Daily Beats Production.
Now it's kind of lo-fi. So you could do this way. There's also another plugin that is really, really cool that you can use that is from Isotope. It's called Vinyl. And this one gives you a bunch of options here. You can have the number of ear that you want. So 2000 would be the highest quality and 1930 would be the lowest quality. As you can see, this removed way more low end and way more high end than I did with the EQs. And 2000 would be the highest quality. Usually when I go for the lo-fi type beat, I would go maybe 80-70, 1970 and 1980. Then we have here wear, we have dust, scratching, and warping. I would stay away from warping too much. We could add some scratching also, but we could also add some dust. Dust is okay to have in a higher amount. Scratching, it depends. Scratching can be a little bit hard in your tracks. And here in the RPM, You can change the speed of the scratching and the dust and make it slower. This is the only difference here. You will not notice any difference in terms of play. It's just a difference in how fast you will get the scratch and how slower it would be. As you can see, let me maybe bring this one here and increase the volume so that you can see the difference. Actually, there's not too much of a difference. But I would assume this would make the sound a little bit slower, or the effect of dust and scratching a little bit slower. So I think that's it for this question. These are the two ways, or the several ways, that I use to add lo-fi to my beats. And this is some of the tips that I would give. Okay, so I would like to do a small break to give some announcements. I will be doing these live streams every Saturday at around 6 p.m. GMT +2, which is the Berlin time. And basically, this is the producer show where I gather all of your questions and I answer them here with videos so that I can help you speed up your learning process and become a better producer faster. I have a link in the description where you can subscribe to the newsletter, where I will be sending forms so that you can post your questions. There will be no marketing material in this newsletter. It's just for this live stream and information about this live stream. And I think that's it in terms of quick announcements. I will be doing some cool stuff in the future, so stay tuned, subscribe, and leave a comment or leave a like. That really helps the channel to grow. We passed the 10,000 subscribers, which was a really big milestone, and something that I really enjoyed. And it continued to gives me motivation and strength to continue doing videos here for you guys, so that I can help you and reach a broader audience and help more people with my work. And let's go to the next question, which is something that we don't talk too much about, or I haven't seen too much videos about. And the question is, what is MIDI? What is the Midi Out plugin? I've recently used this plugin several ways and in several different projects. And this is a plugin that it's not really well understood. And because of this plugin, I will show you a way for you to add extra sounds into your library of sounds for free. And it's very easy. So let's see what is this plugin all about. So to access this plugin, you just go to your browser or to your channel rack. And there's an option here called MIDI, and this is the dashboard and the Midi Out. So let's call this Midi Out. And as you can see, if I start playing notes, I'm playing notes with my keyboard, nothing happens. Nothing really happens in this one because there's no sound associated with this plugin. This just sends information. So if I send here, if I start adding notes, let's say that I add notes like this, for instance. If I play this, you see that this is playing, but nothing is, no audio is going out. And this is a very important distinction that we have to understand. It's like MIDI is just information. It's not audio. It's just information. And we can send this information outside of FL Studio. So let's say that you have a virtual keyboard or a keyboard connected to your computer. If it's one of these MIDI keyboards like I have here, as you can see, I have this MIDI keyboard there. It's from M Audio. Today I'm using one from Arturia. And this is a MIDI keyboard that you just simply plug into FL Studio. And this is a plug and play. So you plug in through USB and you can just send notes into FL Studio. those notes that are sent from these keyboards into FL Studio are MIDI information. It's MIDI notes. And the MIDI is a protocol to share audio information or musical information between devices. And for instance, you also have, if you have a sound card, you will probably have a MIDI interface. I did a video with my TD3 from Behringer, and this video was how to send data from FL Studio to the TD3. And one of the things, or one of the ways I used to do that was with Midi Out. And if we jump into FL Studio again, you can see that we have here this port selector. And if you go to your options and MIDI settings, you will have what is called or you will have your devices here. And as you can see, I have my Arturia Keylab 61 and is enabled, but there's no port associated with it. There's this MIDI in Arturia Keylab 2, and this is connected to port 1. And then I also have my Focusrite USB MIDI, and this is, again, there's no port selection here. There's also some outputs, and the outputs is what we are interested in. So these inputs is when you connect a keyboard into your computer or to your computer, you plug it in, and you can start sending information to FL Studio, and that's these input devices. So as you can see, if I click my keyboard, you see that I have note on and note off. And I'm clicking now on C, note on, note off, note on, note off. But if I were to come here and disable this, I'm clicking again on the same key and nothing happens. You see there's no information there. Now I have to enable this, and now I get information back again. So this is the stuff that is coming into FL Studio. Midi Out is the same thing, but going out of FL Studio. So let's say that you have a keyboard connected to FL Studio, and that keyboard plays some sounds. It's not a MIDI keyboard. You can connect a MIDI cable into that keyboard and control that keyboard using FL Studio. You can do that with a MIDI, with a keyboard, with a piano. You could do that with a synthesizer like the TV3 that I showed in the video. So there's several devices, external devices that you can be controlled with FL Studio. And you do that with this Midi Out plugin. And as you can see here, I have my Focusrite USB MIDI in, and there's no port selection here. So let's say that I wanted to send from my audio interface, I wanted to send MIDI information on port 2. As you can see, now it's synced. I would go here and put on port 2. And if I were to send notes from this MIDI Out, if I were to play this now with these notes here, this MIDI information is going outside through my Focusrite interface, as you can see here in port 2. If I were to remove this one here, then this information will not, this information will not be sent through my Focusrite. And that's basically this Midi Out plugin. This Midi Out plugin do not have any audio. It does not generate anything. It just sends MIDI information outside to the outside world from FL Studio. So you are working here. Let's say that you have a bunch of synths that you want to control, or pianos or whatever. You just connect some MIDI cables from your audio interface and to the synth that you want to control, or the device that you want to control. Then you have to configure the MIDI settings here of your Focusrite output device, and then you have to use the same port here. And by using that port, you will be able to send MIDI information from within FL Studio and control the notes that are being played in your synth. And then you can record that audio back into FL Studio. I know it can be a little bit hard to understand all of this stuff here, but it's after you do it one or twice, you will get the basic idea. But again, this is just some testing. You have to go ahead and do some testing with yourself. If you have a MIDI device or a synth that accepts MIDI, that would be enough. If you just use a MIDI keyboard, you don't have to do that because it's a USB MIDI keyboard most likely, and you just plug and play, and it's very, very easy to work with. So that was that question there. What is the Midi Out plugin? And now I'm going to talk about the way you can extend your sample or your plugin libraries, or not the plugin libraries, your generator libraries, maybe your sound libraries a little bit with more. You can increase it with extra instruments, and they are for free. And this is using the Midi Out plugin. And basically, it's a combination of the Fruity LSD and the Midi Out plugin. So this would be a really cool way to use this Midi Out plugin inside of FL Studio without in combination with Fruity LSD, and you will see what I'm talking about. So let's jump into FL Studio again. So I still have here Midi Out, and now let's add the Fruity LSD. To add the Fruity LSD, you have to go to your mixer because this it's not a virtual instrument here. It's an effect, or it's not the generator, it's an effect. So if we go now here to MISC, we have this Fruity LSD, and by default, if we look at this, we see piano, standard, but we don't see anything. If I click on notes here, you see that I'm clicking on notes, nothing happening. Why? Because this plugin here, this Fruity LSD, extends some of the sounds, some of the MIDI sounds that you have installed in your card. So this is something that we all have in our system. So if you play some MIDI notes in Windows, you will get some sounds, or in your sound card there are some sounds installed. And if I click here, you see there's a bunch of sounds that we can take advantage of. There's actually a lot of sounds that we can use, and for that we have to just connect something to Fruity LSD, and this is where Midi Out comes into play. So as you can see, I have here this port section, and if you look at the hint panel, it says MIDI input port number, and it's on port 1, but we have here port 0. If I move this to port 1, like so, and if I go now to the piano roll, and if I start playing some notes, let me just move these like so. Now we can hear some sounds. And you can see this is the piano. If I play, we have now sound. If I move this to port 0, now we lost sound. If I put it in port 2, we also lose sound. So this is actually something, this plugin here, Fruity LSD, it's not, it's tapping some MIDI notes that we have, or some MIDI devices that we have installed in our computer. This is not sound that is coming in from FL Studio. So it's not samples that we have installed in FL Studio that is creating, or a synth that is creating these noises, no, or these sounds. This is MIDI instruments that we all have installed in our system, in our sound boards. And it's very easy. You just put it Midi Out, and now we have a bunch more plugins that we can use. So let's go ahead through some of the plugins that we have here, or the sounds. As you can see, sounds good. Let's see this Wonky Tonk. That's a funny name. Let's see this electric piano. So some really cool plugins, or some really cool sounds. I keep saying plugins, I don't know why. Let's see this harpsichord. Let's see clavinet, music box, glockenspiel. You see the point. So now we have a bunch more sounds here. Let's see some violins. I could work with this. Let's bring this down. Of course, this will not be the highest quality of sounds you have, but at least it's something that you can work with. And if you are starting out, you probably don't have too much sounds in your system, and this could be a nice way to have some really cool new sounds. And as you can see, there are some usable sounds. I will not say that these are the highest quality sounds you will find, but you can definitely start using. Let's see some drums. Okay, let's see what else we have here. There's a bunch of stuff that we could telephone one. Let me see this one. This is funny. Let's see if this has some pitch. Oh, it does have pitch. I could make a beat with this. That's fun. Let's see this door creaking. Yeah, this one is not so good. Scratch. As you can see, there's some helicopters. Let's see this one. Car engine. We have here some effects for free in this way. And let's see gunshot. Nice. Laser gun. This would be fun. Okay, let's stop having fun, at least with this one. As you can see, this is a very simple way that you can expand your sound library and have some effects here. I'm sure they have also some drums. As you can see, synth drums. They have reverse cymbals and stuff like that. So you can have a bunch of fun with these plugins here. And even because these are kind of lo-fi-ish or old school, you can also create some old school or lo-fi beats using these sounds here. And again, you load the Fruity LST into your mixer, and then you load a Midi Out into your channel rack. You sync both ports, so port 1 here with port 1. You can also move this to port 10 and move this to port 10, and it still works. So the ports must be synced. If your ports are synced, the Midi Out will send information or will send data, MIDI data, to your sound card that will reproduce this through FL Studio. So this is a very cheap way and a free way actually to get some extra sounds in your plugin installation, I guess. And it's a really cool way to get some new sounds, maybe some old school sounds to get that old school vibe or lo-fi vibe. Okay, let's go to the final question that I have here for today. And the question is multiband compression with frequency splitter. So I almost was not able to say that correctly. And frequency splitter was a plugin, or is a plugin, that was a new plugin added to the FL Studio collection. And it's a really cool plugin that we can take a look at. So let's jump into FL Studio. There is a multiband compressor plugin. So we have, if we go here to dynamics, we have multiband compressor, and we also have maximum. So let me load these two here. And let's load the Maximus. So these are two of the multiband compressor plugins that we have in FL Studio. As you can see, we have this one with a low band, mid band, and high band. And then we have here not three extra bands, but we have Maximus with also 3 bands that we can move around here, the frequencies and there. But let's say that you want to have 4 bands. You want to have a multiband compressor with 4 bands. 3 is not enough for you. How can you do it? You can do that with frequency splitter. So let's bring patcher, because that will be the best way to do something like that. And this is kind of an advanced tutorial on how to use or how to do that. But it's a cool one. And I strongly recommend you start using patcher, because whenever you start getting a hang of it, you will have a lot of benefits when it comes to designing your own audio paths. So let's firstly add some frequency splitter here. And let's open this up. And as you can see, we have 3 bands. But I said, okay, but I want 4. I don't want 3. Let's see if we have here 4 band. I don't think so. I think we only have 3. So how can we do that? First of all, we have to enable more bands or more outputs. So let's go here, outputs, audio, and let's do send 1, send 2, and send 3. So let's disable this one and let's bring some sounds into our project so that we can listen to something while we do some testing. And for that, I'm going to bring some loops. This one is okay. Okay, let's bring this to the channel 1 or track 1. So now if I play, there's no audio coming in. So if I do this, so this is all the bands. So if I solo one of these bands, let me see, how can I solo? How can I solo the bands? Okay, mostly like this. So this is the mid band, this is the low band, and this is the high band. So now that I have all the bands here and you listen to all of them, this output here is the main output, which gives all the audio signals. So let's see now this one here. Okay, so this is not giving me anything. So what I can do here, as you can see, we have the sends. I can send this to port 1, this to port 2, and this to port 3. And now in port 1 here, I will have the low end. In port 2, I will have the mid end, or the mid, not mid end, but the mids. Let me remove here. And then on port 3, I will have the high end. So basically, I just splitted all these frequencies into different outputs here so that I can manipulate them all. And let's say that I want to add a compressor. Now I can go here, dynamics, and let's do a simple compressor. And I can add this one here. I would like to duplicate this. There's no option to duplicate, so I have to manually load another thing here. So now we can add a new one, and now I can add a different, where is it? Here, another limiter, and now we have 3 bands, or a multi-band compressor with 3 bands. And we can also disable the main output. So this actually is something like this. So it should be let's see if this is the low end. No, it's actually the high end. I don't know why this one switched to the thing. This is the low end and this is the mids. So I can actually do something like that. I would like to have the lines going correctly, but yeah, whatever. So high end, mids, and low end. So, but I said that I wanted a 4-band multi-band compressor. How can I do that? Now I have to decide which band I want to subdivide. So let's say that I want to bring this one here. No, not that one. Let me reset the gain. But this one, let's say that I want to have it at around 100 Hertz. And I want to have the higher frequency from 5K up. And then I want to split this band here, the mid band. What can I do? I can go to the mid band, which I think is this one. Yes. And I can disconnect it from the signal chain. And instead of having a fruity limiter, I will have another fruity splitter. And where is it? New fruity splitter. And now I will connect the Fruity splitter here. Let me remove this connection. And let's bring this one here. And again, I will do the same. For this one, I want to have only, I would like to have only 2 bands. I know that it's possible to set only 2 bands. I don't know where. Let's see. Let's see okay. Now we have only 2 bands. And now I can send the lower band here and the higher band to port 2. Something like that, and we can still check here the not the gain, the bands here. Actually, yeah, this was the button that I was looking for. Okay, so this would be the button to change the crossfade of the bands. So now I can do the same thing here. Audio, disable the main output, and send 1. And send 2. And let's listen to these 2 now. So now I have from, let me open this one. Let's put them side by side. So now I have from 100 to 500. I think this is, no, 700. So I have 100 to 700. And then I have from 700 to 5K. This was the point where I applied the other split. So now if I go to this one here and I disable this one and I bring this one. Why it's not giving me, okay, because I did it wrong. It's not this one, it's the high. Okay, so now I have only the 700 to 5K. And this way I can now bring again another compressor like so and add another compressor. Okay, as you can see, this can start to become a little bit complex. And let's bring this one here like so. And we can start adding our own plugins. So now we have, if I play, we will have the full range of the audio. And let's see if this actually applies some, what's the word that I'm looking for? If this changed the sounding of the sound, or if it adds some coloring to the sound. I cannot hear any difference in terms of the audio itself. So this split here is actually doing some work. So let's start, for instance, with the low end. Now, actually, this is the high end. Okay, let's start with the low end, which should be the lower part here. And now we can add some compression here. So let's go to the compressor. Let's bring the threshold down. Let's add some ratio. Okay, and we can add some compression here. We can do the same thing here. Let's do a heavier compression in this one. Something like that. We could add a little bit of gain. I'm just playing around with this. And we could do the same thing here. Let's lower the threshold, increase the ratio. Add a little bit of gain and bring the high end. And let's do something like that. So now we have 4 multi-band compressor with 4 bands. So let's listen now the before and after. Again, this is just for demo purposes. I'm not looking to add compression to this drum loop, but this is how you can split your channel into 4, or your audio into 4 different bands and add effects to them. Very easy. And of course you could now save this preset, maybe reset all the compressor states you could just go here, default, so that you have a default state. Oops, not that. Default and default. And now you could go ahead and save this preset as, and save it as a 4-band multi-band compressor. That's what I'm going to do. I will call this 4-band 4-band compressor, or 4 multi-band compressor comp, something like that. And next time, let's say that I'm working with a different project and I want to add that preset that I created. I just go here and I do 4 multi-band compressor, and now I have my multi-band compressors here that I can just quickly go through and start compressing my entire track with 4 bands. And again, you could do this with EQs, you could do this with reverb. Let's say you only want to add reverb to a specific part of your track. You could do this way, and it's a very good way to do some processing. Again, this was a little bit more complex, a little bit more advanced, but is a good way for you to start understanding a little bit more about Patcher, because this is a very powerful plugin that allows you to do some really, really cool stuff when you start understanding how to use this type of flows or workflows in audio. So I think that's it, guys. I don't have any more questions for today. It's already 7 p.m. and I'm going to work out afterwards and have something to eat. And that's it. Thanks for joining the live streams. Thanks for all of the questions that you guys put in the channel and you send me over. And I will be doing these live streams every Saturday at around 6 p.m. GMT +2, which is the Berlin time. If you want to have your questions answered here in the live stream, you can leave your questions in the chat. You can leave your questions in the video comments that I have on my channel. And you can also subscribe to the newsletter, where I will be sending regularly forms where you can post your questions. And in this newsletter, I will not be sending any marketing material. Will be just product information, or not product information, will be just information about the live stream. And that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of these 10,000 subscribers that I feel very proud of to have. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.